So, Jon Bernthal is probably the best thing about Daredevil Born Again, episode 4, but the funny thing is, he's nothing like the Punisher, and shills all across the internet are freaking out.
I know you're in.
Yes, yes, yes.
There it is.
Oh!
There it is.
Ooh, chills.
What the fuck?
Rating this the highest out of all of the episodes. But before we get into it, if you want to support the channel, you don't have to. You could go over to my Patreon and it would be greatly appreciated. So, I'm just going to say flat out about this episode. Without Jon Bernthal coming in, this episode would have been, I don't know, 2 out of 10. Now, I'm not even the biggest Jon Bernthal fan. I believe he put in the worst portrayal of Frank Castle on screen. And I'm not going to lie to you, as somebody who's a fan of the real Punisher from the comics, who is a hero who is mentally stable, this show fails in that department horribly once again, making Frank Castle a nut who has a super long beard, who isn't even the Punisher anymore, and also he's like addicted to pills or something. Oh yeah, and did I forget to mention, his first time reappearing as Frank on screen was him screaming like a retard. Now I get the Punisher screaming his head off. He has a right to. The dude is literally Rambo, and most of the time in the comics, it's pretty awesome. But that's not really what they're trying to convey here. He doesn't have a red bandana and a big machine gun and is screaming whilst he guns down scumbags. No, instead he's sitting in his apartment. He somehow left the door open so Matt Murdock can actually get the drop on him. Think of that now. The Punisher left his front door open, then he comes running out of the darkness with a hatchet, screaming like a lunatic. And for the people out there who are fake fans who don't really read the comics, check out Mike Barnes' Punisher, issue 2 I believe, and this exact interaction happens, except everybody's being accurate to their characters. Daredevil pays Frank a visit in his apartment the exact same way, except Frank isn't insane, he doesn't have a beard like a hobo, and he's not addicted to pills. But the one scene we did get with Frank Castle in this episode was probably one of the best things in the show so far. I don't know why more people aren't calling this out, but the show has extremely formulaic writing, where Matthew Murdock and Wilson Fisk are both on the same path. They both gave up their past life of what they were doing and now have to return to it. And coincidentally, they both return to it at the exact same time in this episode. Am I meant to be in awe with my jaw on the floor looking at this episode going, oh look, it's Fisk and Matt and they're like the same, the parallels between them? I don't care. Retards online are trying to argue saying there's a reason why he's not in the Daredevil suit. Well, this episode proved my point, that they just teased it even more, with some of the end shots being Matt finally picking up that stick, twirling it around like an idiot, and looking at all of his different multicolored masks. And before we even got anything, it cuts to black and makes you wait until next week. Speaking of Matt, can we just talk about how far away from the character he's actually gone? Like, the opening scene of this episode was Matt at the morgue, looking at White Tiger's body, being kind of distraught and annoyed that this happened even though he thought the system worked. Now, real Daredevil from any comic book would throw on his suit and go look for whoever did this, or go to the church and pray, because, you know, that's the character. Instead, he just kind of acts like it's normal, and then as he's leaving, the White Tiger's daughter shows up for probably the most cringiest part in the show, so brace for impact.
I hate this city. No one's doing anything about it, and no one's ever gonna do anything about it. Because he was just Hector from the Heights, and they're the fucking cops.
Go fuck yourself, you fucking child.
What the hell are you cursing for? In this whole goddamn show, they could never be any way as dark as the Netflix one. So they have to make up for it by shoving in curse words randomly. And also, can we talk about the little undertone in there, where she says, oh, he's just Hector from the Heights, and they're the effing cops. We get it. We get what you're trying to say. You hate the city, and you hate all the white people and all of the white cops. Then Matt tries to talk her down, and we get an even more offensive part, because he says all we have to do is believe that whoever did this will be stopped. And all I could think of whilst watching it was, wait a second, wasn't Hector and his entire family Christian? Like, I can show you the screenshots right now. Crosses hanging up in Hector's house. And Matthew Murdock is also a Catholic. So why isn't he saying, oh, all we can do now is pray that somebody out there will bring whoever did this to justice. We can pray for your father. The rest of the episode went on as you'd expect. Wilson Fisk sitting down in a therapy room. Wilson Fisk sitting down in a classroom looking like a special needs person. And then like immediately media stunt goes wrong or something, and he starts freaking out like Joe Biden. No, I'm not lying to you. I'll show you right now. He starts walking rapidly, twitching and almost falling over himself, asking everybody around him, "Where am I?" Like he's Joe Biden and he has memory loss.
Where am I? Where am I? Where am I? What, are you retarded?
And instead of being the all-powerful mayor who tells every single person what to do, because that's who the kingpin is, instead he's Vanessa's bitch, and he also gets talking down to by fake Kamala Harris.
With all due respect, you can't just decide something and then speak it into existence. This is city government. There are processes.
Yes, processes.
Goodbye.
And just like every other episode, 90% of every single scene is blown out with a big white light. Don't try to call this new war, and don't try to say just because there's a red flicker of light in certain scenes and there's shadows that it's great lighting. As I've said in previous videos, most of the time it just looks like a CW show. And another common thread throughout every episode is the BB report. Basically, Ben Urich's black race-swapped daughter is going around interviewing people of color about New York City, and for some reason she's not using her iPhone or a new camera to record it. I'll put it on the screen right now, but just last night I discovered this article comparing Daredevil Born Again and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. How in the name of God could they compare them, you could ask? Well, apparently they both show New York as a city really well. Now, I agree on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, but I don't know what people are seeing in this TV show. They're literally trying to copy the exact same style of showing everyday New Yorkers going around and what they think of vigilantism and the superheroes. Except it's inserted at random times that make no sense. Speaking of stuff that's inserted into the show and makes no sense, stock footage just keeps on appearing. It doesn't make the show feel alive or new war or like an actual world. No, it's just stock footage of people walking and the city and trains going by. And also, halfway through the episode, Matt gets this new client. It's a black guy who was caught stealing, and he has a massive criminal record that goes on for years and years. Yet there's about 2 or 3 full monologue scenes where this dude, who's a terrible actor doing his best Chris Rock impression, just hounds Matt for like 30 minutes straight, screaming about racism and the system and food stamps and white cops. The dude actually says the words, "It doesn't matter what I did before. I'm just so hungry. I'm eating food stamps. I just wanted a little bit of dessert. So that's why I stole food." And Matthew Murdock, somebody who's always in the pursuit of justice, stops and goes, yeah, I guess you're right. How is he right? The dude is a criminal. Why are you letting this retarded criminal talk down to you and tell you about the system?
See, that's funny. Cause you can't see shit.
And all throughout this garbage, there's this music playing underneath, which is the theme song of the show, as if Daredevil is on screen, except it's some black guy whining about racism. After this, Matt goes in and talks to some girl in the court, and whilst watching the scene, I couldn't help but notice that this girl has way better chemistry with Matt Murdock, and she looks and acts more like Heather Glenn. Literally, Heather Glenn is one of the worst parts about this show. The woman looks 50 and like she's Mexican or something, but when you actually look into it, she's not Mexican, but she's not exactly white either. And then you have this actress who just appeared for one scene, which would have been a way better pick for the character. In the most poignant scene in this otherwise terrible episode, where the Punisher and Matt are having this heated argument, Charlie Cox probably puts in the worst performance of Matt Murdock. The dude ends up crying. No, I'm not joking. Frank is screaming into his face, and then Matt starts crying. So let me get this straight. The most amount of action in the show was him picking up a little bullet casing, doing a tiny little vault over a railing, and then when he actually finds the Punisher, he points into his face and says, "The system works. And also, Frank, you're a victim," or something. And then when Frank actually says something, he starts crying his eyes out. And just about when we think all this madness of Matt being a cuck can stop, he goes back to being an utter soy boy. Like Frank is getting up in his face, and then he just throws a right hook, and you think they're gonna have a fight like something out of a comic book. You know, the things that these characters are actually based on. But no, he punches him once, then like the beta male he is, backs down and goes, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry." I don't care what you say. The character of Matt Murdock, Daredevil from the comics is a Christian who has Christian morality and ideals of real justice. He doesn't need to be told how to get his life back on track by some raging black lunatic or Frank Castle or some Latino little girl. And this show is missing all of that. He's not a Christian. He's probably the weakest guy in the entire show. And people can just say whatever they want to him and get away with it. Like, remember that time in the masterpiece Daredevil Yellow where Matt beat up like 3 or 4 guys for making fun of him? No, in this show you can just say whatever you want to his face and he'll back down or start crying. This show just keeps on getting worse. Charlie Cox is not Daredevil and Jon Bernthal is not the Punisher. And everybody rating this super high is an absolute moron who doesn't know anything about Daredevil. So just a quick little summary. Matt Murdock gets bossed around by low IQ people of colour. Frank Castle is an utter lunatic, and black race swap Kingpin from the Ben Affleck movie puts in a better performance than Vincent D'Onofrio, because Michael Clark Duncan actually played Wilson Fisk and Vincent D'Onofrio is playing Joe Biden.
Where am I?
Stop believing in the lies. This show is a woke disaster, and to be honest, I'm loving every second of it. So if you agreed with anything I said and you know that Daredevil Born Again is utter trash, then do let me know. And if you got a frelling problem, go complain to your boyfriend.